Hey, my happy shiny puppies. This is Melody Fletcher, and I teach the law of attraction and reality creation to highly intellectual people in a way that actually makes some freaking sense. And today I have a wonderful but way down the rabbit hole question. Actually, it doesn't sound so down the rabbit hole, but when I went to answer it, I found that it really kind of is. So here we go. So you've heard me talk about how we're moving from the third dimension to the fifth dimension, how we're raising our vibration, how the energy is getting faster and faster and faster. And the question that I received was, why? Why is the energy getting faster? Why is it lighter now than it was generations ago? And it seems a pretty easy question to answer, but when you really get into the nitty-gritty of it, it turns out not so much, which is why we have to go way down the rabbit hole. So if you are one of these people who doesn't really enjoy the down the rabbit hole stuff that much, maybe it doesn't make that much sense to you, then don't worry about it. This video may not make a lot of sense either. But if you're one of the people who is like, yes, rabbit hole, then come on. All right. So here we go. So why is the energy always expanding through time? Well, you've heard me talk about time before, and we have to reiterate here that time is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. That means that there really isn't this linear progression through time, and time is not a static thing. In other words, an hour is not equal to an hour. Yeah, an hour can be much longer or much shorter, a minute, a second, a nanosecond. These are not actually static measurements of time. We think they are, but they are not. So when we're talking about the passage of time from the past to the future, this is actually a different way of talking about the evolution from a denser energy into a not so dense energy, into a lighter energy. So when we think about the past, which is just a label, yeah, we're really talking about a time or an energy state that is denser. And when we're talking about the future or something being forward in time from another point in time, we're talking about an energy state that is not as dense or lighter. Yeah. So when we're talking about energy, physical energy, generally when a frequency swings faster, when it's moving faster, it is a higher frequency. So we're bringing some of these sort of physical physics terms in here to talk about this stuff, because all we're really doing is doing our best to make sense of something that is so complicated and so complex that it's very difficult to wrap our brains around it, even conceptually. And so we do our best using the information and the things that we've discovered, you know, the things that we have, the understanding that we have. And so when you're talking about something moving faster, like we talked about just now, we talk about it, you know, being at a higher frequency. You're still with me, right? Good. So I'm going to use a very imperfect physical metaphor here. And it's imperfect, not because it's not based on physics. It is. It's because we're going to look at physical physics to try to explain something non-physical. And it isn't that they use different kinds of physics. It's that our understanding of physical physics isn't quite there yet. But this is going to give you a decent idea. But it's not a perfect metaphor. So quantum physicists, don't jump on me for this one. Okay. So if you think about an ice cube, where, you know, it's very dense, it's very solid, and the molecules are really mushed together. There's not really any movement, not much anyway. There's not much space between them, yeah, and they're kind of static almost. And so not much movement, dense physical energy. So you melt that ice cube and it becomes water. Now there's more space between the molecules and they're moving faster. So we consider that a higher frequency. They've expanded. It also takes up more room. They've expanded. Now you take that water and you expand it further. You let it become steam. Yeah. So the water becomes steam because we heat it up and it evaporates, and the molecules start to dance faster and faster and faster. More and more space becomes between the molecules. As you heat the water up, this is what happens. Expand. And until they finally become steam. So in steam, which is out of the three states, ice, water, steam, the least dense version of that, it takes up the most room, it's the most expanded, and it's got the highest vibration, so to say. Yeah, because the molecules are moving at the greatest speed. Not a perfect metaphor. Totally get it. Don't jump on me. But I think it's starting to kind of make sense why we use the terms that we do and what it is that we're really talking about. We're really just talking about the expansion of energy. So why does the energy constantly expand from generation to generation through the passage of time? Like I said, it doesn't expand through the passage of time. We use the passage of time to talk about energy expanding. But why is it doing that? Because everything is consciousness. We're going to go way down the rabbit hole here, so brace yourself. Everything is consciousness. And consciousness is always expanding. The whole universe is always expanding. This we kind of have gleaned from physics, right? So consciousness expanding. Why is consciousness always expanding? Because consciousness is always adding unto itself. Let me rephrase that and explain. Consciousness, by very definition, is always striving to become more aware of itself. And as consciousness becomes more aware of itself, it is adding through that awareness to itself. Think about it this way. If you're an all-powerful, all-knowing being, and you want to become aware of yourself, the very act that you become aware of something that you have not become aware, that you were not aware of before, means that now there is more to become aware of, because you could become aware of the fact that you are aware, and you could become aware of the awareness that you are aware, and so on and so on and so on into infinity. But the very fact of becoming aware of something, of learning something new, of becoming conscious of something that you were not conscious of before, adds to the whole. It becomes bigger. It expands, it becomes lighter. Because as we add to our perspective, as we add to the different sides that we can see, the different angles that we see, we expand. And you have to understand that fear relies on a limited perspective. Love lives in an expanded perspective. So as we move into a more expanded perspective, we are very naturally being drawn from fear to love. Because fear cannot live in an expanded perspective. It doesn't make any sense. It relies upon the limitation. It relies on you seeing only one side and making assumptions about that. Why is this important? Why is any of this important? Well, it's not. But if you have trouble accepting the idea that the energy is always rising and evolving and getting faster and faster and faster, then this explanation might help you accept that. Why is it important for you to accept that? Well, if the energy is always expanding and evolving through time, which means as we move forward in time, as we continue, we're always raising our vibration, we're always expanding, consciousness is expanding. That means that, as we move forward in time, things will always get better and better and better and better. And now you know the mechanics of why. So I hope that you enjoyed this explanation. I know this was, I really enjoyed this one. This took a couple of tries. I had to really think about this one for a second. Went right down the rabbit hole, but I really like this. I got more great stuff coming up for you guys soon. Until then, I am sending you all the happy, shiny, smushy puppy hugs that I can. And I want to thank you for bringing your light to the world. Bye.